Several people hurt, as you know, in Israel overnight and into early this morning following a new wave of attacks from Iran. It comes just hours after the president said the U.S. and Iran were at least engaged in very strong talks to try to bring this conflict to an end. How concerned are you that Iran will not hold up their end of the bargain?
I'm hugely concerned. I mean, I don't trust the Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC. When you look at, for example, they just appointed another IRGC former general as the chief of the Supreme National Security Council. That sends a clear signal. When we killed Larijani, they just put another one in there. You put Galabar in there as part of the negotiating team from Iran. They're all IRGC. We've combated them for over 40 years. Look, you know, I'm a big believer in the principles of war. One of them is simplicity. Let's just finish the job. We took away their nuclear weapons. We took away their military forces. Now's the time where we get rid of the theocratic government and go forward. And hopefully we'll get some type of government that works well with the other Gulf nations. We're not there yet. I think we should be. I hope the president thinks like that. I don't know. You got to give him full credit for what he's done. No other president has done it, but it's time we finish the job.
So how do we finish the job? I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, given your vast experience, about simplicity, but I don't see a simple solution to getting Iran to agree to end the war, the hostilities, essentially. They keep firing missiles, as I mentioned. They keep firing drones at other Gulf states and wreaking more havoc. In your eyes, what would be the simplest way to end this so the president could keep to the 4 to 5 week timetable?
Yeah, you basically put a stranglehold on their economy. What I mean by that is you actually use ground troops. You know, you basically put troops on the ground like the Romans did. You know, it's the only way you really control territory. And there's two places I'd do it. Not in the interior of Iran, but you can take Karg Island, which is 80 to 90% of their economic output in oil, and it's a petro state, and you can clear Bandar Abbas near the Strait of Hormuz. You can do that with 2 amphibious ready groups, Marines, that are heading that way. They can help clear and open the strait. And you can take parachute troops, the 82nd or Rangers, somebody like that, to take Karg Island, which sits 15 to 16 miles offshore. Now you've got control of their economy. You know, even President Trump said in 1988 with a New York Times interview, take their oil, take Karg Island. And maybe that's what you need to do, finish the job. Otherwise, we're going to see this in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line, Ed. And I'm tired of fighting these guys and working against these guys. Let's just finish the job once and for all.
Absolutely. But one quick follow-up on that. Some reports I've read suggested, and this may be wrong, that if you send in the 82nd Airborne or another group, some kind of special forces, that they could be sitting ducks for the Iranians and other bad actors to go after our troops. Does the president potentially get into a quagmire if we're trying to take over Karg Island? You make it sound simple, so I want to understand, make sure that I'm clear and our audience is clear. Would the U.S. military be sitting ducks there? How do we do it so it's simple? Take Karg Island, as you say, stranglehold on the Iranian economy. Can we do that in a short amount of time, or are we stuck there for months or even years?
No, you can do it in a short amount of time. Look, we've crossed the Rubicon on war. We're at war, and that means there's risk involved. That means soldiers, potentially airmen, Marines, whatever, potentially are going to get hurt. I've been there. I've seen that. But we have to make that assumption that's going to happen and finish the job. It's a long-term. It's not a short-term issue. It's a long-term issue. Are they vulnerable? Of course they are. Is there risk involved? Of course there is. But I think that's the only way you really finish that job is to economically put a stranglehold on them, and you do that through their oil pipeline, which is Karg Island and the Strait of Hormuz. And we can do it. We have the capacity and the capability to do it both ways.
Last thing on Iran, you mentioned a moment ago that the president gets great credit for what he's accomplished so far. CNN had a guest on, Miles Taylor, you remember, who's been a critic of the president. It was anonymous, so-called anonymous, writing that book years ago. Maybe he wishes he remained anonymous, because he went on CNN last night and got schooled as he tried to praise Barack Obama's approach to Iran. Listen.
3 of us ragged on the Obama administration for giving cash to the Iranian regime to reach a nuclear deal. I think it was $400 million in pallets. What Donald Trump just did on lifting sanctions on Iranian oil
that's already at sea
is 10 times as much money likely to the Iranian regime. 10 times as much money. He's giving cash to our enemies while we're bombing them.
Miles, do you think that the Ayatollah prefers his life under Obama or under Trump?
Look,
Probably Obama, yes?
The Ayatollah's dead.
There you go.
The question is,
You heard it here first.
Scott Jennings owned it, as he always does. The Ayatollah is dead. Wasn't the Barack Obama approach vastly different than what we've seen from President Trump?
Oh, absolutely. And you give great credit to President Trump for what he's done. Look, I am surprised that national television allows Miles to go on TV. You can't be that dumb and actually talk about things that are serious like war. And war is a serious business. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And we've got some great people out there. It's not a business deal. It's a gunfight. And we've crossed that river. We crossed the Rubicon. We're in a fight. Let's finish it.
There you go. In terms of finishing a war, let's move on to what your portfolio used to be, which is Special Envoy in terms of ending this Russian war on Ukraine. You were appointed by the president shortly after his historic victory in November 2024. We all know that the president said he was going to end that, if not on day one, very early in this second term. He was repeatedly frustrated by Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, saying he's harder to deal with than Putin. Do you agree with the president's assessment on that? And given your rule of simplicity, what's the simplest way to try and finally end this war in Ukraine based on your experience there? I know it's not easy, but that's your rule. How would you try to get there, sir? How do we get out of this?
Well, first of all, it's not a business deal. It's a war to finish, and Putin has been the aggressor, and you need to apply the pressure on Putin to do it. Zelensky is a hard ass. Okay, I've got it. He's a lot like President Trump. He's very direct. He's very hard, not in stature, but the way he is, and the way he operates, and the way he talks. But I've been into Ukraine. I've seen the people. I know what they're doing. I've been to the battlefront. I know what's happening out there. And I give great credit to the Ukrainians. What they have done in the last 4 years plus is astounding. They've basically taken and stopped the Russian war machine dead cold. And you got to give them credit for that. And I think it's over time that Putin just has to realize he cannot win this war. He's not winning the war. He's not going to win the war. He can do it. Declare victory and go home.
There you go.